All right. Hey, class. So, welcome to Unit 13. And I've titled this unit the 1960s. And so, a lot is going to happen in the 1960s. All the roots for these things are going to have been laid in the 1950s. But the 1960s is really going to look at an explosion of social issues. And so some of those are going to be obviously, for those of you who know your history, the civil rights movement is going to definitely have roots in the 1950s, all going back much further than that. But there's going to be a nexus of events that occur in the 1960s. We're going to see feminism and feminist issues start to come to the forefront during this time period. That will continue into the 70s and 80s, but it's really going to get its base and root here. We're going to see an anti war movement and protest specifically to the Vietnam War popping up. And so there's going to be a lot of social unrest. In the background of this, we're going to have the hippies and we're going to have the free love movement. We're going to have the explosion of pop music. So the 1950s is going to give us rock and roll and is going to move us into this more popularized music. But then by the 1960s, we're going to have an enormous influence from music, specifically on young people. So, as you know, the modern period was questioning, it had these existential questions over what was the meaning of existence or the meaning of life, these really substantial questions, especially um, given the possibility of nuclear annihilation and the dehumanization of World War II and the mass death of World War I and a loss of a lot of traditional moral centers, religious, familial. For pretty much all of human history, people had lived in extended families. And now, starting in the 1940s and 50s, as we move into this suburban existence, people are not living in multi-generational homes like they used to. And so even the family, this notion of this nuclear family, a mother, a father, and two kids, it starts to become isolating for a lot of people. All of these things, the loss of community as people had known it for a long time. And so there's going to be a lot of this existential questioning, what is the meaning of life? And in some cases, many cases, in fact, people are going to start to delve into the personal. And as we know today, sometimes this can be referred to as identity politics, where people become associate with their identity and gain meaning from, you know, other places, whether it be their gender or their race or their, in some cases, family. But people are looking for, who am I? And what does it mean to be me? And what kind of, if there is no inherent meaning in life, according to an existentialist, then what kind of meaning do I want for my life? And so it provides a lot of opportunity for re-examining historical context. At the same time, there's a push against, I would say, the centralization of government and politics and economics. So during this period, that's going to be referred to, as I mentioned in the last unit, the postmodern period. Um, the postmodern period, the centralization, we're going to see governments getting larger to many people's hesitancy, even during the Vietnam War, the ability of the government to enlist soldiers in a war that they felt questionable about. You'll hear lots of critiques of the male patriarchy starting now, and the military industrial complex and business. We're going to see the real full explosion that's going to start post World War One, post World War II. We're going to see another explosion of consumer goods and sort of corporate power. And people are going to start to question all of these things. And here you can see John Green from Crash Course says, one of his lines I love: the personal becomes political. And that's very much, we still continue, as I'm sure many of you can extrapolate, we still continue to live in this world today where the personal is often the basis for a political view. And this is, this is new. When I say new, going back to the 1960s, but this didn't have a whole lot of earlier precedent as a standard way in which someone would position themselves within society. Previously, it could be based on religion, or it could be based on nationality. It could be based on a number of things, but it was rarely about the personal. And so this becomes the period where people are going to push for personal freedoms very aggressively. And interestingly enough, it's going to champion in this role of isolation that's happening, social isolation. We're going to see the championing of the individual. And along with this, I think what's interesting, and this is just me personally, exploring these ideas, is that I think that ironically, as we move towards this individual identity and each person individually trying to create their own meaning of their own existence, we also see, I think, the counterflow of this is the explosion of, in a far more modern sense, the explosion of social media, where everybody's looking for community and belonging and acceptance. And I'm not saying any of those things are bad, or social media is bad. Has its pros and cons. But I want you to look at this period, how the personal becomes political, and how it's all about the individual. And I think we'll see a back, every, the pendulum swings in politics, and it swings this way and then it swings that way. And it's same with philosophies and philosophical things. And so in the next unit, we'll delve into postmodernism a little bit more. But what we're going to be looking at here in this particular chapter is we're going to be looking at the historical components of how race, gender, the war impacted music, poetry, and specifically politics. So that's your Unit 13 introduction. If you have any questions, just let me know.